where President Trump is now officially scheduled to sit down with Vladimir Putin. And the American president apparently taking Putin's word over U.S. intelligence once again on Russia's election meddling. The First Lady, Melania Trump, visiting another immigration facility as the feds asked the Pentagon to find beds for thousands more families. We're live on the border. And replacing a crucial swing vote on the Supreme Court. We'll look at a few of the top contenders as some Democrats promise this fight is not over. Let's get to it.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
And good Thursday afternoon from the Fox News deck, a showdown over the Russia investigation. FBI Director Christopher Wray and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein testifying today on Capitol Hill. Rosenstein appointed the special counsel Robert Mueller, and he oversees the investigation into Russian election meddling and possible ties to Team Trump. Today, Rosenstein took the brunt of criticism from Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee, including South Carolina's Trey Gowdy, who was the head of the House Oversight Committee. In just one of today's many fiery moments, Trey Gowdy said the Russia investigation is dividing Americans and that it's time to wrap it up.
Russia attacked this country. They should be the target, but Russia isn't being hurt by this investigation right now. We are. This country is being hurt by it. We are being divided. We've seen the bias. We've seen the bias. We need to see the evidence. If you have evidence of wrongdoing by any member of the Trump campaign, present it to the damn grand jury. If you have evidence that this president acted inappropriately, present it to the American people. There's an old saying that justice delayed is justice denied. I think right now all of us are being denied. Whatever you got, finish it the hell up, because this country is being torn apart.
For context, Congressman Gowdy headed the Benghazi investigation. It lasted twice as long as the Mueller probe has so far and found no evidence of any wrongdoing by Hillary Clinton. Other high-profile investigations have lasted much longer. Iran-Contra and Watergate, for instance, went on for 6 years each. As for the bias the congressman mentioned, he indicates he's referring to the private texts on government phones between the FBI agent Peter Strzok and former FBI lawyer Lisa Page. Messages which show Strzok promising to stop Mr. Trump from becoming elected president. We do not have the full context, and the Justice Department Inspector General said that he found no evidence that bias affected the outcome of the Hillary Clinton email investigation. But President Trump and some Republicans have called the messages evidence that Russia investigation is rigged. Here's Rosenstein's response to Congressman Gowdy.
Nobody is more offended than I about what's reflected in those messages. With regard to the investigation, I've heard the suggestions that we should just close the investigation. I think the best thing we can do is finish it appropriately and reach a conclusion. And I certainly agree with you, sir, that people should not jump to conclusions without seeing the evidence.
In other words, let the investigation play out. And it is. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, is on Fox Top Story live on Capitol Hill. Hi, Catherine.
Thanks, Shep. Well, we got a lot of movement, a lot of traffic right now because the hearing after 6 hours has just wrapped up. And if we're lucky, we may see the Deputy Attorney General and the FBI Director heading down that way where we've got a bank of cameras. One theme that really dominated the hearing today were these outstanding records that show the FBI's intelligence activities prior to July 31st, 2016. That is when the Russia collusion case officially opened. Those records were first under subpoena in April and the subject of a very testy exchange earlier today.
So your statement that I'm personally keeping information from you, trying to conceal information...
You're the boss, Mr. Rosenstein.
That's correct. And my job is to make sure that we respond to your concerns. We have, sir. Now, I've appointed Mr. Lausch, who is managing that production. And my understanding is it's actually going very well, sir. So I appreciate your concerns.
Again, I think the House of Representatives is going to say otherwise.
But your use of this to attack me personally...
Why did you... It's not wrong.
What we saw consistently from Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee today is that they were really on the offensive. They were doing what they could to reaffirm the decision-making of the FBI Director and the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Here's one exchange.
Mr. Wright, are you one of those 13 angry Democrats that my Republican colleagues keep referring to?
Well, Congressman, of course, I'm not working on the special counsel investigation.
But you're the head of the FBI. Are you a Democrat? Did the president reach over to the Democratic Party as presidents have and pick you because he wanted to have Democrats in his administration?
Congressman, I'm trying to do this job apolitically, but I do not consider myself an angry Democrat. You can be quite confident.
Are you a Democrat?
No, I am not.
You're not a Democrat. Thank you. Maybe I should have gone to that question. Mr. Rosenstein, are you a Democrat?
I'm not a Democrat, and I'm not angry.
Okay, so that was a clear reference to one of the many Trump tweets that we've had on the subject. A couple of sort of housekeeping matters on Agent Strzok. Agent Strzok, a number of times during his closed-door interview yesterday, refused to answer questions. And what we learned today is that one of those questions had to do with his contact with the co-founder of the opposition research firm Fusion GPS. That was the firm behind the dossier. And we also learned that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has taken specific steps to see if Agent Strzok made any decisions or took the Special Counsel investigation in a direction that really was a reflection of the political bias that is seen in the text messages, Shep.
Catherine, in the middle of all of this, it's my understanding the House Republicans passed a resolution.
That's right. This is a non-binding resolution. It calls on the Deputy Attorney General to provide the remaining records that are sought by these three committees, House Judiciary, House Intelligence, and House Oversight. That was a vote, 226 Republicans to 183 Democrats. One of the sort of testy moments in the hearing came with Congressman Darrell Issa, and he asked the Deputy Attorney General, look, if we go forward on contempt and we want to pursue it in the district court in Washington, will you throw up any roadblocks? And here that is.
Do you believe that you have the ability to be above the law, something the American people do not?
No, sir, I do not have the ability.
Good. Since you do not believe that, I will take that as if you're held in contempt, it will go forward. You said no, and yes or no was fine, that you don't believe you're above the law.
So that really will come to some kind of resolution probably the week of July 6th, because they're going to be heading into the congressional recess. But again, I just want to emphasize it's a non-binding resolution, but the idea is to really send a political message and set the table for some Republicans who believe that contempt or even impeachment is necessary or even justified in this situation, Shep.
Catherine Herridge on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Catherine. Questions mount today about why President Trump again appears to be siding with the Russians as they assert they did not meddle in the United States 2016 election. A new presidential statement by Twitter, just as we're getting details about a planned summit with the Russian president and former KGB agent Vladimir Putin. The White House says the two leaders will hold their first formal meeting on July the 16th in Helsinki, Finland. They've met twice that we know about on the sidelines of other summits. Today, President Trump tweeted, Russia continues to say they had nothing to do with meddling in our election. Where is the DNC server? And why didn't shady James Comey and the now disgraced FBI agents take and closely examine it? Why isn't Russia being looked into? Or looked at, I should say. So many questions, so much corruption. President Trump is largely alone in his sentiment. The statement contradicts the finding of the entirety of the United States intelligence community and nearly every member of Congress in each political party. The evidence is overwhelming, they say. Russia did interfere in the 2016 presidential election. Yesterday, Putin said relations between the two countries are at a low point and he's hoping to improve them. President Trump said he expects the summit to cover many subjects. He mentioned Syria, where Russia is supporting the dictator Bashar al-Assad, who's murdered 500,000 people, and Ukraine, which Russia invaded and seized Crimea. The U.S. hit Russia with financial punishment for doing so. The chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, is on the North Lawn. But first, there is breaking news. These are live pictures at the Capitol Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland. We had word just a short time ago of reports of an active shooter. That was the initial report. Reports of a shooting at a building in Maryland that's home to one of the nation's oldest newspapers, again, the Capital Gazette. And you can see the law enforcement coming together outside. We have just gotten word from the sheriff that, in fact, and this is confirmed now by Fox News, that there are multiple fatalities at this location. This, again, reports of the shooting at the offices of, near Washington, D.C., at the offices of the Capital Gazette newspaper. This is Annapolis, Maryland. And I have just learned, along with you, that there are multiple fatalities now reported at this location. I must tell you, hardly a day goes by in recent memory that there's not a report of an active shooter somewhere. They come in so often that most often we spend a lot of time ferreting these things out before ever even mentioning them to you. Today, we had hoped that would be the case here, but instead we have gotten word from the sheriff that they have multiple fatalities. And Ron Bateman is on the phone now. I'm told. Are you Sheriff Bateman? Are you with us?
Yes, sir, I'm with you.
What happened there, Sheriff? What can you tell us?
It's very limited information right now. This is an Anne Arundel County Police investigation. However, we share jurisdiction, the sheriffs and the police, and I was just informed a little while ago that based on the radio transmissions, several of my deputy sheriffs went to that address to provide assistance and do what it was necessary at the scene, and that's when we heard over the radio there were multiple fatalities. And in fact, one of my deputy sheriff canine handlers made an apprehension of a suspect. It is an active investigation. It's unfolding as we speak. I am at basically at the office right now as in command of what's going on with my deputy sheriffs. Of course, the county police have their own command. But again, this is all very new, as we're talking right now. So that's where we stand.
Sheriff, I want to ask you a few more things about what you've just said and answer what you can, if you can. You mentioned, first of all, that one of your deputies apprehended a suspect. What can you tell us about the circumstances surrounding that?
I do not know. It just came over the air that one of my deputy sheriff canine handlers said the suspect was in custody.
A lone suspect, one person?
That's all that we heard over the radio. So that's all I know at this time.
So the early reports are, as we both very well know, sometimes turn out to be wrong. But those early reports are, I think, important for context for our viewers now. What do you know about how all of this began, if anything?
I do not know that at this time.
And so we don't know if this suspect, is there still an active search, or do you now believe that the urgency has passed?
I'd be premature if I'd answer that because I do not know. I just know that one suspect has been apprehended at this time.
And Anne Arundel, this is Anne Arundel's case.
This is an Anne Arundel County Police case. They were the initial ones that responded. When we heard the transmission over the radio, then my deputy sheriffs, as normal, responded to give assistance.
Do we know anything about the victims?
No, sir, I do not.
And we don't know if there had been any sort of threat or if they were on alert or anything like that.
No, sir, I do not know that either.
Wow, Sheriff, anything else that you could pass along that I haven't thought to ask you?
No, you've covered it all. Again, it's my apologies. This is just so early. This is really tragic.
We're all a little stunned along with you, Sheriff. It's just unimaginable that this keeps happening in America.
Over and over again.
Sir, all the best to you. Our producers will stay in touch. As you can update us, please do so. Again, it's just another shocking news afternoon. With the turmoil that we're finding ourselves in day to day. And now, again, this is Anne Arundel County outside Washington, D.C., one of the oldest newspapers in the country. And from the best information that we've been able to gather, and again, we were doing so before we came on the air at 3 o'clock Eastern, we had word of an active shooter. There was a lot of activity on social media. But we just weren't sure and wanted to wait to hear directly from authorities before passing it along to you, and now we have. The sheriff there says multiple fatalities are now confirmed. One of his deputies says that he took in a suspect. You heard along with me. We don't know whether male or female. We don't know if there are believed to be other suspects. You can often tell by the actions of the authorities on the ground about whether they are tense and in a defensive mode. We've been watching these pictures from multiple choppers over the last few minutes, and we're just not able to ascertain where they are in all of this. They're very good, this particular jurisdiction, about communicating with the media. We've gotten a call from the sheriff himself there. Trace Gallagher is monitoring things along with us. Trace, just multiple fatalities. Beyond that, I just don't have much.
And beyond that, Shep, none of us really have much. We're kind of waiting for authorities to kind of chime in on this. Of course, we hear the scattered traffic. We don't want to report on that because we haven't confirmed a lot of this stuff. We can really tell you the Capital Gazette has been and is one of the oldest papers, as you mentioned. And this thing first started printing back in 1884 and has gone through several iterations since then. They just moved offices back in 2014 after being in a certain office for more than 50 years. So the building we're talking about right now, they have been in only since 2014. For those who don't know anything about the Capital Gazette, they call it the Capitol. If you're there in Maryland, it is owned by the Baltimore Sun, and it is also a sister paper to the Maryland Gazette. Back in 2006, the paper made headlines because one of the part owners and the editor of the paper actually committed suicide. The paper, as you can see right there, we get a better idea of kind of what the response is for this, and we've seen a lot of these, whether it's a hospital or a newspaper or a school. You can get an idea of what's happening inside the building by what's happening outside. Are they in barricaded positions? You can see at the top right hand of your screen, there seems to be some officers kind of gathered there. Well, you saw there, we don't have control of the helicopter pictures, but there seem to be some officers or first responders, medical personnel that are outside the building kind of openly walking around, which is a sign that they don't believe, or at least history tells us it's a sign that they no longer believe that an active shooter poses an imminent threat to those who are outside the building, which is, in a case like this, a smidgen of good news in what looks to be a very dark day in Annapolis, Maryland, Shep. We're going to gather some more information on what we believe is happening in and outside the building. You know, once SWAT teams get inside this building, it is the same format, the same standard operating procedure as you have in any kind of active shooter. They go room to room, closet to closet, area to area, and floor to floor, looking for those who might be sheltering in place and looking for those who want to cause harm to those who might be sheltering in place. So information is always very slow coming out, and the reason is because they want to make sure it's the proper information, and they want to make sure that accountability is the #1 issue here, and that means making sure the person who is trying to cause others harm has been neutralized or taken into custody. We don't know either of those yet, Shep.
And we'll be right back to you, Trace, with new information. First, the Capitol, you can see, we were led to believe a little while ago that a life flight helicopter was going to be taking off and going to a not too far away level 1 trauma center. Often when that's the case, a shooting victim who has survived, obviously, is being rushed away for the kind of care that only really level 1 trauma centers in America can give. Good friends who are EMTs and other first responders have told me for years on end, if we can get you to a level 1 trauma center with a bullet wound, if we can get you there alive, your chances of surviving are really quite good. So if that's the case here, you know, that's going to be the effort. Again, the Capital Gazette Communications Company publishes The Capitol, which is a daily newspaper that serves Annapolis, Maryland, the greater Anne Arundel County, and Kent Island there in Maryland. It also publishes the Maryland Gazette twice a week for residents in some smaller communities. But this location is the main headquarters of the place. Annapolis police have announced the incident on Bestgate Road outside the city of Annapolis. And I'm now told by our information specialists here that ATF is responding to this. You can see people who were inside the building, very common from the early days of the Columbine shooting. When you come out of a building like this where there's been an active shooter, They frisk you, make sure you're not going to harm anyone, then tell you to get your arms in the air so others don't have to worry about you. You may have just seen a police officer lower left of the screen raise his hands up in the air and say, give the motion to get your hands up, and then all the rest of them complied. They do this because people are at such a nerve's edge that they want to make sure that no one who is not a threat accidentally looks like a threat, so they tell everyone to get their hands in the air. A Twitter user from about 35 minutes ago was first to report this. So just about 10 minutes before 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time is our belief of when the first reports of this came out, with just an address, the address of this place, 888 Bestgate, saying, active shooter, 888 Bestgate, please help us. Other information that we've gotten, this is from the Annapolis Police Department, a verified account there, just confirming that this had happened. And the man who tweeted to us, please help us, is an intern at the newspaper, presumably for part of the summer internship program. We have 150 or so interns here at Fox News Channel, just as newspapers do across the country. And they're in to learn the beginning of providing people information. And on this day, that intern apparently caught up in the middle of an active shooter situation. We have a number of affiliated stations in Washington. Our flagship there is Fox 5 WTTG for the Washington, D.C. area in Maryland and Virginia. We're working to get their off-air signal, and we'll bring you their coverage in just a moment. We're also affiliated with our network news service stations, and one of those is ABC 7 in Washington, and it is now reporting that sources are telling ABC 7 in D.C. that a shotgun was involved and a suspect is in custody at this shooting there in Annapolis. Now, you remember the sheriff told us that it was his understanding that his own sheriff's deputy had encountered a suspect and taken that suspect into custody. He didn't have anything further except to say that a suspect was in custody. We're now given the indication, at least, that authorities believe the threat has passed. So you put those two together, and hopefully they think they have the suspect and that no one else is in danger, but they're certainly being extremely careful and very coordinated as they evacuate the building, as you can see on these live pictures coming to us, again, from our flagship station there in Washington, WTTG. You may have noticed on your phones, if you're following this at all on your phones, there's some Twitter pictures out of there that show the level of response to this. It would appear that authorities have been coming in from all directions and are now working in a sort of combined effort under one head, where, again, WJLA, ABC 7 in Washington reporting that a shotgun was involved. That is not to say that there might have been something else as well. We don't know. But JLA is reporting, WJLA TV, ABC 7 in D.C. is reporting that a shotgun was involved. They don't say used, so we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. There is video of the police arriving, and we're waiting for our connection to WTTG's off-air signal so that we can get access to their reporters, and we'll have that in just a second. But first, I'm told Trace Gallagher has an update. Trace?
Just a quick lay of the land there, Shep, kind of an update. This is about 3 or 4 miles, the newspaper headquarters from the U.S. Naval Academy. We should know that it's about 3 or 4 miles from the Capitol building, and it runs right along U.S. 50, which is a major east-west artery there. And as you watch what's going on the ground, keep in mind we mentioned that the Capitol is owned by the Baltimore Sun. Well, now the Baltimore Sun is taking precautions in Baltimore. They are now clearing their newsroom and making sure they do, maybe clearing is too strong, but they are doing a sweep of the Baltimore Sun to make sure there is no connection with sister newspapers or ownership portions of this company. So in Baltimore, they are now doing their own police procedure going through the Baltimore Sun to make sure that there is no threat there as well. We do not know the genesis of why they're doing this, except for the fact that the Baltimore Sun owns the Capitol. We don't know why they're actually going through, if there was some type of threat, but we do know that they're now doing a sweep of the Baltimore Sun. We would anticipate that other papers that are owned by the Sun and are in this group might also have some police procedures going on today. But again, it's very difficult to tell what kind of precipitated the reasoning for going through the Baltimore Sun, if there was a threat or if this is simply a precautionary. But it's an interesting factoid that is happening simultaneously while police are still trying to figure out who this suspect, which we have now been told is in custody, who he is or she is, or what the background, the motive, and everything else that goes along with these types of active shooter situations. Shep.
Trace, thanks. The Associated Press is now sending out urgent messages to its clients across the country and around the world that this shooting has happened. Associated Press is reporting multiple people are confirmed shot. It was the sheriff of Anne Arundel County, Ron Bateman, who live on Fox News Channel told us just a few moments ago, the sheriff himself told us that there are multiple fatalities inside the building. We just don't have the context that we would like to have at this moment to pass along to you. We don't know if this was an employee dispute of some kind, a workplace dispute. We don't know if it was a domestic dispute that's found its way into this business. We don't know. We just don't have any of the context yet. So we're going to wait to hear from the authorities on exactly what happened. But certainly people in the D.C. area who are watching, some serious concerns about who was there and exactly what happened. We're doing all that we can to reach people on scene. Of course, the authorities are extremely busy at the moment. The latest from Associated Press as follows, with a Dateline Annapolis from Associated Press. Multiple people have been shot at the Capitol newspaper in Annapolis. The Baltimore Sun, which owns the Annapolis newspaper, says a reporter told them of the shooting this afternoon. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, or ATF, says it is responding to these reports, and we believe some are on scene now. Mark Lemansky is a spokesman for the Anne Arundel County Police Department. He says officers have been searching this building where the shooting happened. He now tells Associated Press, and I'm quoting, "The situation is active and ongoing." Lemansky says he has no details about potential victims and couldn't even confirm the exact location of the building. That's the Associated Press report. Of course, it's Sheriff Bateman himself who tells us that there are multiple fatalities on scene. And there are indications now, though they use the word active, the reports that we're getting is that the authorities are not treating this at the moment as an active shooter situation. The reports that we're getting from them is it was an active shooter situation, that they took the suspect into custody. They've given us no reason to believe there is another suspect out there, and it would appear that what they're doing is going room to room, area to area, evacuating people who have not been physically affected by this and trying to get those who may have been physically affected in one way or another the kind of care that they need. And, of course, investigators trying to piece together what happened and whether whoever is responsible had an accomplice in any way, whether that person is responsible had left any information behind on social media, on Facebook accounts, or has any explanation for what it is that's happened here. Largely in the early going, you do that to make sure that there's not another assailant in any place, that this isn't something coordinated. And I must say we have no reason to believe that it is. We also have no reason to believe that this newspaper was a target in any way. The truth is we just don't yet know the context. We believe the first calls came in about almost exactly 40 minutes ago now. The original call was an active shooter situation, and at about the same time, this tweet came out from a young man who is an intern there at the newspaper. And that young man saying, there's a shooter in here, please come and help us. And by the time that tweet was out, it's our understanding that law enforcement was already screaming to that location. And now we see the familiar scene of people single file coming out of a place of business. Sometimes it's a school, sometimes it's a place of business. But the telltale sign that there has been yet another gun violence incident in yet another spot in America. We're waiting for the authorities to come tell us anything that they can. They've not sent out anything official in the last few minutes. I do have something new that's just come in here on our internal computers, and this is coming to us from the police department. Here we go. from the police, multiple fatalities. Again, Mark Heiner, the police have just sent out this information. The police have just confirmed there may be more shooters and there may be bombs. Now, for context, it's not as if the police are saying we have reason to believe there may be more shooters. We have reason to believe that there may be bombs. They do not. They're being very careful to say this is part of routine operation after an event like this. So what they're saying is we can't tell you definitively what's happening here, but we can tell you what we're checking on. They're like, we have a suspect. We're checking to see if there may be more of them. So we're acting as if there are, to err on the side of caution. In addition, in scenes like this, in other areas in the country at other times, there have been occasions when suspects left explosives behind. Because it's happened before, they're checking for it here. So that's the reason for a little bit of confusion in the active shooter situation. The truth is the authorities believe that they have the one and only suspect, but they're now checking to make sure. And the reason for the parlance here is the splitting of hairs on whether this is an active shooter situation or not. They believe that it's passed, but they don't want to find that they were wrong about that and end up with some more people hurt. So they're dotting every I and crossing every T. They're marching every person who was in there after being frisked and checked to make sure that they're of no danger to anyone else, marching them out. Most, if not all, will be interviewed in one way or another at some point. And once they get all of the innocents out of the building, they're going room by room, door by door, closet by closet, bathroom by bathroom, through every inch of that building to make sure, A, there are no more shooters, B, there's nothing else that might harm anyone, before coming out and saying to those who are watching and listening and who are seriously concerned, before coming out and saying that this is over and done with. There is no doubt they hope so, but at this moment they cannot confirm that. The latest we've gotten now, WJLA on scene there, our network news service affiliate, explaining that they're going through this checklist and trying to get everyone out of the building. And at some point, they'll be able to give us information about who's hurt, who may have lost his or her life, and then to the degree that they can, what happened here. Multiple fatalities is what Sheriff Bateman has told us at Fox News, though that specific has not been given out there at the scene. It's my understanding that the area around this, the Capital newspaper and the Capital Gazette company, the area around this has been cordoned off. Streets are largely closed in the area. The authorities are asking people to please stay away from this area to avoid any further confusion and distress for the people who are there as they work to figure out whether indeed the danger has passed. We've been searching, and we don't have anything to indicate that there had been any sort of threats here, any reason to believe there were any problems, at least nothing to which we have access. If that sort of thing is the case, I'm sure we'll find out at some point. I want to get to Trace Gallagher, who's working this from our West Coast News Hub. First, though, a new tweet from police, this again from Anne Arundel Police. The county is Anne Arundel, 2 words, locals say Anne Arundel, and they're confirming active shooter at 888 Bestgate Road in Annapolis. Building evacuated. That's new. They've gotten the building evacuated. Officers continuing to search building. Relocation point is inside the Lord Taylor in the mall. So this is right next to a fairly large and well-known mall there. And everyone who was in that building, they want to keep them all together so that they can interview them and make sure to get everybody's story straight. So what they're doing is they're relocating everybody who was there at the time to a nearby mall at a Lord & Taylor store, which they've just sort of taken over. You might imagine anything near here they're going to shut down. Trace reported that the parent company of this is the Baltimore Sun, so they've swept the newsroom of our friends at the Baltimore Sun in Maryland just as a precaution. You know, something happens in one division of your company, you want to check it all, just to be as careful as you possibly can. And our understanding is they found no reason for concern at the Baltimore Sun newsroom. But here, of course, the investigation is just beginning, and no doubt it will go on for months and months. Trace Gallagher, I guess we're just waiting now to hear a little bit more from police.
We are, Shep, and just to kind of pick up on a couple of things you said, there was, as you said, no threat to the Baltimore Sun. It was strictly a precaution. The reason they went through that newsroom was because it was the parent company of the Capitol here. You mentioned roads closed in the area. We have now heard that the Interstate 450 and the 178 have now been shut down in both directions. So anybody who is thinking about going near Annapolis is going to have a very difficult time getting in and around that area. And when you bring up the fact that there's bombs that have been said, you know, there's a possibility they're looking for or sweeping for bombs. Yeah, you go back to all these school shootings and it's the same MO. You go in and you look for these different devices that might be on. If you think back to Columbine, which you and I both spent a great deal of time covering, Shep, that was a bombing event. The whole idea behind Columbine was they were going to blow up the whole school, and the bombs didn't work. The propane bombs, the other bombs didn't work, and so they brought in guns. But because of that, and ever since then, anytime you have these types of shootings, they always kind of go through the checklist of multiple shooters and are there explosive devices on the campus. And it's interesting that the shotgun is being mentioned in this case because every newspaper in the country, any sizable newspaper, this seems to be a fairly moderate-sized newspaper, has security. I mean, you can't just walk into a newsroom that's open and aired in any city in the country. So it's interesting that a shotgun was the weapon that we're being told was used in this scenario, because you would assume that there is security, and to get a shotgun in this building would be a task unto itself. We've been checking the editorial board to find out if there's some kind of ideological bent to the Capitol, and there really doesn't seem to be any. I mean, for the most part, this is a local newspaper. It covers the Capitol, it covers City Hall, it covers the local races. For example, they just endorsed a moderate Democrat candidate in the primaries, but the editorial board doesn't seem to have any severe ideological bent. So you kind of look toward the you know, what's the MO, what's the motive behind something like this, and there's nothing that jumps out at you that says, well, it could possibly be this. So we're still kind of filtering through some of our checklist items as to what people and police look for when these types of active shooter scenarios go down. Shep.
Trace, we're getting dispatches now from reporters with local stations with which we have affiliations. I've been mentioning WJLA and our friends at ABC7 there. They have a reporter on scene who says, and I'm quoting, "I'm watching someone I've known a long time, a reporter from the Capital Gazette newspaper, dealing with his grief. He's in such a way we can't really spin the camera around to show him. A tough scene out here, to be sure. Clearly something very terrible has happened here." The Capitol newsroom, and a shooting in it today, according to the sheriff, has left multiple people dead. Prince George's County's fire department, Prince George's County, Maryland, an adjacent county, confirms to Fox News just now that they're currently sending a bomb squad to Annapolis to assist with the Anne Arundel Police Department. It's a county that has a police department, so Anne Arundel Police are working this, and Prince George's County's fire department is helping. And that's according to a spokesman from Prince George's Fire Department. Said they're also sending an ambulance bus. President has been informed of this. We've just gotten word from the White House, from Lindsay Walters, who says that the president has been briefed about this shooting in Annapolis. They're expecting a gaggle aboard Air Force One. Remember, they have little news conferences when the cameras are up and that sort of thing. And then they have gaggles, which is mainly a pen and paper event, as the reporters put it. You take notes. There's a discussion of whatever is happening in the world at the moment, or whatever the reporters and the spokesperson are doing, but it doesn't include cameras. They call that a gaggle, and they're expected to have one of those on Air Force One in a minute. After they do, they'll send out information from that on a dispatch from Air Force One, and I'll be able to give you that information as it happens. I mentioned earlier that police went to the Baltimore Sun newspaper, the parent company of this particular newspaper, and they checked the place, and they found everything to be normal at the Baltimore Sun. Now we've said they didn't believe there was any threat on the Sun, but the police are remaining in heightened levels at the Baltimore Sun, just as a precaution for this afternoon. WJLA reporter, ABC7 in Washington, reports that they're being kept about 100 yards of the building. according to that reporter, line of sight tells me probably not a risk here, or else people would move them away. The overriding belief now is that the urgency has passed, that the suspect is in custody, and that now what they're doing is an investigation. But they won't come out and say that until they're 100% sure. Baltimore Sun has just sent out this dispatch. Baltimore police responded to their building on North Calvert Street, did a sweep as a precaution, all clear. I mentioned that they were sending some of those who were witnesses, people who were in the building when the shooting happened. Again, just very close to an hour ago now, those who were inside the building at the time but haven't been physically affected have been removed to a nearby mall, to a Lord & Taylor store at the Westfield Annapolis Mall. That mall is not on lockdown, but they have taken some of that space there at the Lord & Taylor to bring all of these people who were inside the building. You figure there were employees of the newspaper there, any guests who might have been there, interns, office staff, all the rest, and all of those are now gathering nearby at the Lord & Taylor in the mall. And this is pictures from just a short time ago. You can see the officer leading the people who had been inside, some of them probably in the middle of their workday, making sure that the hands stay in the air. And you can see authorities. There's one who started them. There's another who's bringing them along now. See in the middle of your screen saying, all right, we're going to walk this way. We're going to come right past this sign here, so that everyone who's involved, there's a police officer or some sort of law enforcement, has eyes on everyone the whole time. And they do this as a matter of training. Our reporters and producers have been involved in these sorts of trainings. To say they're standardized across the nation would probably be a stretch. But they are very similar, and they all work off similar playbooks. Remember, they used to, the modus operandi used to be when there's an active shooter, you wait and see who it is, where it is, and how you're going to respond. That's how it was back in the days of the Columbine shooting. And then they sort of changed their procedures since then. Get in, do what you can to stop the shooter as quickly as possible. And then the ways that they clean it all up afterwards and process the crime scene, all of that has changed. And we're seeing it play out before our eyes here this afternoon. Some new information that I've just gotten from the governor of Maryland. Governor Larry Hogan has just said, retweeting Anne Arundel police, saying absolutely devastated to learn of this tragedy in Annapolis. Governor Hogan saying, I am in contact with the county executive, and the police department is on the scene assisting the Anne Arundel County Police Department. Please heed all warnings and stay away from the area. The governor finishes saying, praying for those on scene and for our community. The 62nd governor of the state of Maryland, Larry Hogan, reacting to what appears to be another act of gun violence in the workplace, this time in Annapolis, Maryland, and Arundel County. And you can see the TD Bank there in the not very far away, just across the street. And most of the streets in this area shut down. The latest information that we have from the police is, officially they're saying the building is now evacuated. So they believe everyone who could have been in any sort of danger is out of there. They believe that the one suspect is in custody, and they're going, as I mentioned earlier, through every inch of the place to make sure there is nothing behind that may harm anyone. The only information we have about fatalities is the first information we got, and that came from the sheriff of Anne Arundel County, Sheriff Ron Bateman, who was on with us live just less than an hour ago, I should say less than 40 minutes ago, and told us that there were multiple fatalities on scene and that one of his deputies was believed to have been the one who took the suspect into custody. Beyond that, we've learned nothing officially about this suspect. You will find all kinds of things on your phone and within social media and from website to website. Largely this afternoon, they are contradicting each other. None of them is confirmed, and we would certainly never go with any of that information because we don't have anything to verify it. And frankly, it's our belief that those who are sending out information that is suspect don't have anything to go on either. As horrible as these situations are, people who want to be involved in one way or another tend to make them worse by sending out inaccurate information. I would guard against it, at least on your phone from now. We'll hear from the police soon enough. So again, an active discrepancy. We were told that the building had been fully evacuated. You just saw some more people coming out there. So that's not to say that they were intentionally giving us misinformation. Think of this. If you're in an enormous workplace building like this and something like this happens in your building, someone hears shots and hears people screaming, wouldn't a bunch of you maybe go hide somewhere and lock yourself in someplace? Well, that's usually what accounts for these discrepancies. The police are like, we've got this place evacuated, and as they're checking, they find people huddled in a room somewhere or hiding in some way, and they tell them, all right, you're safe, come with us, let's get out of here. And you realize there were more people inside, and that's exactly the reason that they're waiting to confirm all kinds of things for us, because until they hit every inch of that building, they're not going to know. There's no way for them to know. A reporter for the Capital Gazette, Phil Davis, has just sent this. A single shooter shot multiple people at my office, some of whom are dead. Again, that's from a reporter from the Capital Gazette who apparently was there, said, I will tweet what I can while I wait to be interviewed by police. And what he has tweeted thus far is, a single shooter shot multiple people at my office, some of whom are dead. We're working to be in contact with him. We believe that everyone who is brought out, we believe this because the police have told us, that everyone who's being brought out of there is taken to that area at the Lord and Taylor where they'll all be interviewed. Police want to hear from everybody there. Because remember, when people are in a situation about which they could never have dreamed themselves, you know, you're at work and all of a sudden, as we are at this moment, imagine someone comes in and starts firing. Your senses are such that you don't always remember things perfectly accurately. So they want to interview everybody there and get the best indication of exactly what happened, to whom, at what moment, and what was happening around them. And to do that, they have to interview all those people. A Herculean task by the first responders who protect us and investigate for us. And you just can't thank them enough on any day, especially one like this. In addition, we're getting a lot of information from people who were inside when this was happening. In this age of social media, we hear from those would-be victims so much more quickly. The first time I ever remember victims communicating with each other was after the shooting at Virginia Tech. There were probably hundreds of journalists there. We were there for days, and the students were standing around texting in their phones to each other. They were sharing the stories of what had happened with each other before sharing them with the greater public and the media. Today, that sounds like, well, yeah, that's how life is. It was brand new at the days of the Virginia Tech shooting, and it was a notable societal change. Now people who were victims can send out to the families they can't reach tweets or Facebook posts or whatever. For instance, we're getting from Joshua McCarrow, who presumably worked there, saying massive police response to shooting in my newsroom in Annapolis. Went on to say, Pat Ferguson is okay. I am safe, was not there, on my way to the scene. Again, that from Joshua McCarrow. Everyone who was there coming out. We're now getting more from Phil Davis, who is a reporter for the newspaper, who's sending out dispatches while waiting to talk to police. Phil Davis, the reporter, says there is nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under the desk and then hear the gunman reload. My God, what these people have been through today. I'm going to read that again. There's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and then hear the gunman reload. We can only imagine what was happening in the newsroom of this great American institution, of one of the oldest newspapers in the country, whose job is to inform and report to the people. And today, that newsroom, explosive. Phil Davis will never forget the moment he went from reporter to victim. And reading these words is truly chilling. He further says, in another dispatch now, the gunman shot through the glass door to the office and opened fire on multiple employees. Can't say much more and don't want to declare anyone dead, but it's bad. And then later he reported, there's nothing more terrifying than hearing multiple people get shot while you're under your desk and hearing the gunman reload. Senator Ben Cardin has now tweeted saying, devastating, my heart is with the Capitol Gazette and the people of Annapolis right now. As information continues to come in, I remain as grateful as ever to our first responders. If you're in the area, please stay inside and stay safe. I can only tell you the best information that I have. And the best information that I have, if you are one who is worried about someone you know or someone you love who should be there or was there or is there, the best information that I have is the danger has passed, that no one else will be hurt by whoever this was. Police have given every indication, sheriffs, police, everyone with whom we have contact, that they believe this situation has now been neutralized, that no one else is going to be hurt, that the suspect is in custody, that the investigation is underway, that the victims are being taken care of, and that the dead are being treated with respect. It is almost unsettling to realize that people who document for a living, people who observe and report to you for a living, professionally, are today documenting what has happened to themselves. And I'm guessing with that will come a great amount of detail. It's first responders who save our lives and first responders who run into burning buildings and run toward shooters. And they are certainly in a category unto themselves. But frankly, reporters are accustomed to being in places where life has taken an unthinkable turn. To be put in a position to document colossal events that are happening. And today, inside that newsroom, they're doing exactly that. And we will eventually have an extraordinary account of whatever it is that happened today. And I'm confident it will not be pleasant. New now, an FBI spokesman has told Fox News that the FBI's Baltimore field office has now responded. At this point, the shooting in Maryland newsroom is a local head, which means the head of the investigative team is the local agency. So Anne Arundel Police, I presume. And the ATF is there for investigative purposes and for the specifics of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms and what it is that they do. The Naval Academy, the U.S. Naval Academy, is about 5 miles from this location. Our correspondent Leah Gabriel reports that she spoke with the Naval Support Activity in Annapolis, which provides security for the Naval Academy. And the deputy chief says they have not increased the security posture at the Naval Academy, but that security guards are vigilant at all the checkpoints, aware of this situation. In other words, everyone is on edge now in this area. How could you not be? All across the nation's capital, and of course in the metro there around Washington. These live pictures coming to us from Fox 5 WTTG in Washington, where they have left their newsrooms and head to scene. A reporter from our affiliated station WJLA speaking on scene. Let's listen.
Don't come back. We have seen a tweet from an intern in the office saying there is an active shooting. Please help us. A terribly sad thing. The governor tweeting out that this was a tragedy, seeming to confirm the reports, not the numbers or anything, but that there were people injured here.